Hi, this is Kasian, and it's time for our weekly conference call at VectorspaceAI. We'll start with what's happening around the world. The U.S. has experienced its first few cases of Omicron, the new COVID variant. This has happened in San Francisco, Colorado, Minnesota, with 5 cases in New York and 1 in Hawaii. Germany has gone on full lockdown to all non-vaccinated. And this is turning out to be a wait-and-see moment for world markets. BTC is trading at 56.7 and ETH is at 4,500 with the Dow at 34.6. Moving to the industry side, the BBC is reporting that scientists claim big advance in using DNA to store data. Quoting, "Scientists say they have made a major step forward in efforts to store information as molecules of DNA, which are more compact and long-lasting than any other options." Innovative silicon nanochip can reprogram biological tissue in living body. And this is being reported by physics.org, and this relates to work in nanotechnology, which is based on a few scientific collaborations we have related to material sciences. The next headline is how to develop new drugs based on merged datasets, and labmanager.com is reporting this. That, of course, is of interest to us. When it comes to using multiple datasets, augmenting datasets, and using them to make predictions between relationships that drug compounds might have with proteins. The next headline is unsupervised machine learning tool could accelerate catalyst discovery. Quoting, "That's why chemists usually rely on trial and error, testing ligands that they think could work. Scientists have also developed maps to classify these ligands according to their properties. This can help them identify promising candidates visually." The researcher added, but in some cases, these methods don't help. The new results show that machine learning can successfully predict ligands where neither intuition nor visual inspection could succeed, he says. This could accelerate the development of new catalysts by identifying promising targets before making and extensively testing them in the lab. And this is being reported from Chemistry World. Next, Nature is reporting that Google's DeepMind's AI helps untangle the mathematics of knots. Knots may not seem very important to some, but mathematically they're important to just about every industry. Quoting, "The machine learning techniques could benefit other areas of maths that involve large data sets. First, or for the first time, machine learning has spotted mathematical connections that humans had missed. Researchers at artificial intelligence powerhouse DeepMind, based in London, teamed up with mathematicians to tackle 2 separate problems, one in the theory of knots and the other in the study of symmetries. In both cases, AI techniques helped the researchers discover new patterns that could be then investigated using conventional methods. But the team reasoned that machine learning could help them detect patterns, such as relationships between 2 types of objects. Mathematicians could then try to work out the precise relationship by formulating what they call a conjecture, and then attempting to write a rigorous proof that turns that statement into a certainty. Because machine learning requires lots of data to train on, one requirement was to be able to calculate properties for large numbers of objects. In the case of knots, the team calculated several properties called invariants for millions of different knots. Brittingham, one of the researchers there, adds that although machine learning has been used in knot theory before, the author's technique is novel in its ability to discover surprising connections. And from the paper itself, quoting, "Mathematicians' intuition plays an enormous important role in mathematical discovery. It is only with a combination of both rigorous formalism and good intuition that one can tackle complex mathematical problems. The following framework illustrated in Figure 1 describes a general method by which mathematicians can use tools for machine learning to guide their intuitions concerning complex mathematical objects, verifying their hypotheses about the existence of relationships, and helping them understand those relationships. We propose that this is a natural and empirically productive way that these well-understood techniques in statistics and machine learning can be used as part of a mathematician's work. Concretely, it helps guide a mathematician's intuition about the relationship between two mathematical objects. One researcher stated, "My hope is that AI can provide another axis of intelligence for us to work with, and that this new axis will deepen our understanding of the mathematical world." And anyone can look that up. It's being published in Nature. It's been published in Nature. Next, our next headline, we're still under industry. Characterizing tardigrades, disordered protein to understand their resilience. Quoting, "Tardigrades, also known as water bears, are microanimals with an average length of about a half a millimeter. They have 8 legs and have been found in every part of Earth's biosphere. Prior research has shown that they are also able to survive in extremely hostile conditions, from heat conditions up to 150 degrees Celsius, and cold to near absolute zero. They can survive exposure to dehydration, starvation, radiation, and the vacuum of space with no protection." Next, CNBC is reporting NASA awards Blue Origin, Northrop Grumman, and NanoRacks with contracts to build private space stations. Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, Northrop Grumman, and NanoRacks were awarded a total of nearly $416 million under NASA's Commercial LEO Destinations project. NanoRacks won the largest individual award with $160 million, while Blue Origin and Northrop Grumman received $130 million and $125 million, respectively. Next, we'll move on to themes and events. One of the first things we've been tracking would be a gene therapy for the skin called Crystal. It heals wounded skin for kids, applied to kids. They've done apparently a lot of clinical testing on kids. Quoting, "Shares of Crystal, ticker KRYS, were up 120% to $88 in Monday mid-morning trading on the company's report of initial data from the pivotal trial of its VXV treatment. Earlier in the morning, shares topped 103, and Barron's has reported that. So that is an event that would result in a thematic basket of stocks or cryptos related to VXV or any of the official drug compound names. And if you wanted to generate a basket, you would be able to take this drug compound and generate a thematic basket of pharmaceutical companies that may also have drug compounds, similar drug compounds, in their pharmaceutical pipelines. Next, we'll move to Corp. And under Corp, as usual, we have HR, facilities, and legal, and everything is in process there. Under legal, we are engaging in a DAO review, decentralized autonomous organization. That is what we are interested in exploring related to our investment club. We'll keep the public updated. Next, we'll move on to our engineering, product, QA, and ops section, which will be combined with partners, customers, and collaborators this week. First, we've got UCL, University College of London, and we have been working with Syra I. Meehan and some of her staff over there. We have also had a meeting with their head of AI, the head of their AI department, David Barber, and this would be based on building out a machine learning team at UCL related to some machine learning theory, obviously practical applications, what we can commercialize, what we can involve with their tech transfer department in terms of creating vectors, constructing the feature attributes in vectors. These are also called embeddings, and doing a few fancy things with vector transformations, also related to generating correlation matrices, which then result in graph networks and further refined result in relationship networks, which are more powerful as they have metadata and triangulated data, citations, and other kinds of things, summaries involved. So when we expand our team inside UCL, it's going to include initially 2 machine learning theorists and 1 postdoc that's going to be focused on embeddings and language models. This will be under a second arrangement that we have with UCL, and the objective, of course, is to utilize human resources at UCL, skills that are very hard to find in data science and ML and AI. These have been handpicked by our scientific advisor, Saira Aymian, and she has been involved with language models and sequence matching and drug repurposing for a very long time. That's why she was involved with the Space Biosciences and breast cancer research at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Next, we'll move to ICL, Imperial College of London, and the Roos Lab there. Our overall objective, of course, is to build out our scientific arm within these research and academic institutions and universities. And this is going to involve a lot of collaboration on the basic research side. This would be shoring basic research up, accelerating it based on providing new ways to generate hypotheses. This included a presentation based on a meeting that we had with the Roos Lab a few days ago related to molecular pathways in age-related disorders and spaceflight. That was the title of the presentation that they put together. And we discussed a slide deck, a slide named entitled The Challenge. And this is the first slide that we went over. It was related to complex interactions and their research, the research background of the Roos Lab. And one of their research objectives stated in the presentation was bringing together simulation and experiment to capture dynamic processes in cells, especially across and within membranes, structural dynamics. And a few illustrations have been provided for that slide. The second slide we discussed was titled Big Picture, Lipid Regulation in Mitochondria, and precise lipid control determines the cell life or death fate. Can we design new drug classes based on lipids, age-related disorders, and spaceflight? And we went over 8 targets. We're not going to go over the whole slide deck right now, but I just wanted to share these critical, important slides related to the framework of our collaboration. And this slide that I'm looking at here is titled Targets. Again, lipid regulation in mitochondria, and their typical project workflow is described. First, a literature review takes place. That takes weeks, sometimes months. We'll speed that process up a little bit with daily updates to literature, and that's key. Today's research institutions are interested in near real-time updates. That's not something we anticipated. The first 2 targets identified, and we're not talking about drug targets, we're talking about gene targets, protein targets here, which are essentially ways to target a compound. OPA1 and NME4, those are the targets identified in this phase of the collaboration, and that would include designing constructs, synthesizing genes and their recombinant expression, and crystallization with cryo-EM trials, and that takes a few weeks. And the objective would be towards a high throughput design, questions would be, can we find new targets faster by using Vector Space Biosciences technology? A secondary question would be, can we find further hidden connections in the context of age-related disorders and or plus spaceflight? So the way that we begin this process is we collect data sources, and one of the primary data sources the Roos Lab is using is UniProt. This is a protein database related to storing controlled vocabulary, definitions, keys, and values related to genes and proteins, and long descriptions and short descriptions, and all kinds of other metadata and information. And the Roos Lab wants to use all of that data to create a knowledge graph, and we will do that for them. And that's a form of visualization, but we will advance that to a graph network and then advance that to a relationship network, which will then enable them to do what was described in the Nature article related to AlphaFold 2, related to understanding relationships between objects, whether they're mathematical objects or human genes, proteins, pathways, or drug compounds. That speeds up the process of discovery, building up a network of scientific data engineering pipelines that result in multiple data sets, multiple visualizations that are real-time. As new data sources are updated, as new papers are published, the relationship networks and the visualization change. A human-in-the-loop interface is also being built. This would be a real-time validation and curation interface, where a human researcher will be able to provide input or feedback to the algorithm in real time, where the algorithm may have labeled something. The human in the loop would potentially either relabel that or provide additional weight, subtract or add weight to a score, or fix a text summary, for example, or add additional metadata. There are all kinds of things the curation process can involve to increase the precision, accuracy, and relevance of a relationship network, or the relationships between the objects. And another critical component would be the context control. Your relationships change based on the context that you operate in. So having a context-controlled, real-time relationship network, visualized for better data interpretation, data insight, and of course, hypothesis generation leading to novel discovery. That's the objective. So we are currently producing documentation that will outline some of our objectives along with theirs. We're going to add to their presentation and include some of our objectives related to space biosciences, as many of them intersect with the Roos Lab. That form of documentation will be an updated roadmap that we'll use to flesh out feature requirements. Next, we'll move on to the Bissell Lab. We are continuing research efforts with the Bissell Lab related to the extracellular matrix and the brain extracellular matrix, exosomes, and DTCs, or dormant tumor cells. Next, we'll move on to CERN, and this is another scientific collaborator of ours. We met with CERN today based on clustering and visualization, exploring new ways to cluster and visualize. The way that we are visualizing, or the way that we are clustering and creating a visualized graph network for them today is just a simple graph network. It is not a relationship network. That means that we do not have structured metadata and all kinds of additional triangulated data or external citations or references or anything explaining why a node is connected to another node. But that's our next phase. So that's what we talked about. We also talked about a human-in-the-loop validation and curation interface, just like the Roos Lab will have. And the human-in-the-loop validation and curation interface is also being used by, we're developing it for another customer of ours. So what we develop for one customer benefits another customer. That's an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach. Next, we've got Azure Space / SpaceX, and we are preparing Uniprot, the database that we just mentioned related to the Roos Lab, that stores descriptions of proteins and other things. Whenever we construct a knowledge graph, we can store that knowledge graph in a graph database. And Azure Space / SpaceX has designed a database just for that, just for knowledge graphs. So we'll be storing Roos Lab information related to the knowledge graph built in the Cosmo DB, run by Azure Space / SpaceX. We are also currently pricing the HP Spaceborne Computer 2. This is a collaboration between ourselves, SpaceX, Hewlett-Packard, and Imperial College of London, related to designing experiments for the HP Spaceborne Computer 2. The reason we are pricing one out, as mentioned in the past, is we do plan on launching our own experiments, and that would include understanding payload requirements, costs, and launch dates. And we are talking with a few launch companies about that, launching the HP Spaceborne Computer 2, in addition to providing Space Biosciences services as a Space Biosciences unit of theirs for that particular launching company. And we'll be uploading datasets as well as using the Cosmo DB. We won't be storing the datasets in Cosmo DB. We'll just be storing the knowledge graphs. Next, we'll move on to NASA Gene Lab, and there we also will be uploading datasets. So we are working with them to find a convenient way to upload correlation matrix datasets. So we'll keep the public updated on our progress there, but we do plan on uploading hundreds, initially hundreds, eventually thousands, and then hundreds of thousands, up to millions of correlation matrix datasets that enable researchers to visualize a graph or relationship network and then make discoveries by better understanding the relationships between objects. In this case, genes, drugs, proteins, pathways, and diseases in the context of space biosciences and personalized medicine. Next, we'll move on to the Joint Genome Institute, and we have opened a collaboration with the Joint Genome Institute quite a while ago, and we are going to be assembling new collaborators there. Back then, we worked with Dan Roxar, and that was based on genes related to the zebrafish. We actually created embeddings for genes related to the zebrafish. That was in 2006. Industry applications. So we're still under engineering, QA, product, and ops, partners, customers, and collaborators. And under industry applications, we have things structured differently this week. We are not just categorizing our industry partners and academic partners under space biosciences and the financial markets. We are first leading with our scientific collaborators, as you've just experienced, and we will then talk about our industry applications under industry verticals. Our first vertical is the financial markets, and under that vertical we've got Morningstar, S&P, FactSet, and Bloomberg, in addition to LCX. And with LCX, we will be providing crypto basket integration. We were supposed to have a meeting this week, but they rescheduled to next week, so we will see how that goes. What we can say is that they have unlocked engineering resources to integrate our API, which will provide them with a basket, a thematic basket of cryptos related to a global event, a topic, or a theme of any kind in real time. All others, Morningstar, S&P, FactSet, and Bloomberg, are in process. And under the entertainment vertical, so we are operating in the entertainment industry by way of a customer that we have named CSSI, and we are extracting content from scientific papers. These peer-reviewed papers focus on TV content, entertainment content, movie content, Netflix series content, and whether or not that content is offensive, whether or not that content is constructive, and in general clean. So we are currently working on generating extractive and abstractive summaries. They are looking at abstractive summaries. The difference between extractive and abstractive summaries is that extractive summaries extract a sentence or two from the document that summarizes that document. An abstractive summarization will use machine learning techniques to generate words that construct a summary. Generate words that then construct a sentence that then describe the article, as opposed to extracting the sentences. What we note is that when you work with highly technical papers or articles or content of any kind, you want to use extractive summarization. So we are continuing to test with them. We are also building out the curation interface, the human-in-the-loop real-time validation and curation interface for them. We are continuing to design the UI for that. And then on the legal technology side, everything is still in process there. A lot of our work is work that falls out of the financial markets and the entertainment section with CSSI applies to legal tech, in particular the summarization techniques. All others remain in progress. And next we'll move to the corp, dev, biz dev, sales and marketing side. Everything is steady as she goes. And we're going to move into retail offerings, which puts us on the consumer side. The reason we're mentioning this in sales and marketing, in the sales and marketing section here, is because whenever you have a retail offering on the consumer side, a product can market itself. It's very easy for customers to recommend things to other customers or their friends. And if you have a product that is achieving viral-like adoption rates, it is because it is being recommended to people are recommending it to their friends. In addition, every basket that's generated on the retail side will have a little VXV in it. The option to purchase VXV for additional data sets. So it's a virtuous feedback loop in terms of marketing and advertising. On the exchanges side, everything is in process, remains in process. On the IR, PR, and Marcom side, CoinMarketCap has put together an AI index, and we are sitting there at number 5 or number 6 on their AI index, and that is a good way for us to rise above the noise in terms of all the cryptos out there making claims that they operate in AI and ML. We also have announced our scientific advisory board and additional collaborators. So if you haven't seen our recent press release, we'd encourage everybody to do so. It explains where we are headed in terms of our roadmap and leading with the science. We will have additional announcements related to thematic baskets for crypto being available initially through the API for exchanges. We also have interviewed 2 new design firms, design and branding firms. We're going to go through a complete overhaul of our design, and that's going to take about 4 months. In the interim, we will have a site iteration available. We will publish a site iteration so that we can clean things up on our main site. Next, we have questions from the trader base. Question 1. I'm looking at the revenue model and I want to ask, at what stage would year 1 of projected total revenue commence and be accounted for? Well, this is when we are fully funded or capitalized. However, we could start before then. Question 2. Will retail users ever be able to use VectorspaceAI tools for text summarization? I understand GPT-3 can do this, though I would be more than happy to pay for this service from what VectorspaceAI has made. I believe it's supercharged compared to GPT-3. The answer is yes. Retail users, retail traders, consumers will be able to use the Vectorspace text summarization interface and API if they're an individual developer. We will be providing a combination of extractive and abstractive summarization. Question 3. Vectorspace wants to enable thematic crypto baskets for exchanges. However, for the short side cryptos, they act very different from stocks, meaning ghost chains with no usage and even abandoned teams are often still valued in hundreds of millions or even billions. Hence, I wonder how this changes the possibility to successfully short crypto based on vector analysis. If a company experiences a dramatic event, you can estimate the value of that stock to fall substantially. In crypto, these movements do not often seem to be correlated. Example: Aeon project was abandoned in 2019, yet the project is still valued above 100 million in market cap. Neo is still in multiple billions, although no usage nor development happens. How would thematic crypto short baskets work under these circumstances? So this is a loaded question, and the overall answer to this, the overarching answer, is that real organic liquidity, deep organic liquidity, these companies don't have. When you have real organic liquidity, it means that you don't have bot networks painting your tape. When you look at a company that, or a crypto group or crypto project that is out there and may have 100 million market cap, when there's no team or no product and it's vaporware, they did one thing. They did a few things. They made a run on the money, but they also put up a bot network that paints the tape for them. We'd encourage everybody to look up that term, painting the tape. This is something that the SEC has gone after in the traditional markets. It's actually still common. 15 minutes before the close, a fund, a market-making firm, whoever it is, might want to paint the tape just to get the price to a certain point where it achieves some kind of goal, some kind of back-end goal for them. So when you look at cryptos tend to, in the crypto markets, nefarious activity tends to get magnified by 10x. And when you look at bot networks painting the tape, bot networks can't paint the tape in the traditional markets because the SEC would be all over that. That is illegal. So in highly regulated markets, you won't find bot networks painting the tape unless somebody's doing some dark things in dark pools or something like that. However, what you can expect in the crypto markets would be the rampant painting of the tape. And this would mean that there is no depth, real organic depth and liquidity of their trading vehicle, of their crypto. And that means if you try to sell a bunch, it'll drive the price down to zero, and then the bots will begin painting the tape back up to whatever original price it was, executing minimal trades back and forth, or engaged in wash trading, or whatever it is. So that's what you're experiencing there. That's what you're looking at. And this happens on a smaller scale because of regulation in the traditional markets. But in the traditional markets, it's also common for stocks to trade below their book value, below how much money they have in the bank. Some stocks go through Chapter 11, and they'll be trading in a range that no one could have predicted, a high range, way above the value of the entire company. And it's because stocks trade trading vehicles. This includes crypto. They trade based on perceived supply and perceived demand. Not supply and demand, but perceived supply and perceived demand. So the markets do trade differently, the traditional and crypto markets. There are similarities, there are magnifications between the two, regulatory differences, obviously. In any case, we'll adapt our strategy to each. Question 4, I hope you can answer in the next conference call. Will we see VXV be in Web 3.0 or in the metaverse? Well, we're short anything related to the metaverse or SimCity for that matter. Question 5, when is it projected Vectorspace is going to be listed on NYSE and NASDAQ? And would, after its listing, commence year 1 of its revenue model? We don't have any word on when NASDAQ will allow cryptos to be listed, or NYSE for that matter. Question 6, is the utility of the token structured in the same way, just applied to science as opposed to financial markets? Or is VXV utility only for the financial markets? The answer to this is that each industry has its own needs in terms of data provenance, data lineage, data governance, and more importantly, data security. And because of that, each industry may need its own chain. So each industry has different functional requirements, different chain requirements, and they relate to the way that industry constructs, designs, and ingests, uses data sets. Some industries are more focused on financial aspects, financial security aspects of a data set. Some scientific institutions less concerned about the financial security of the data set, whether or not it can be misused, for example. Question 7, how many different segments will Vectorspace be working over? For example, the agreement says, and they're referring to the ICL, Imperial College of London agreement, says Vector Space Biosciences Inc., whereas VectorspaceAI is the head. Well, just to clear this up, Vector Space Biosciences Inc. is the U.S. domiciled company and the parent of VectorspaceAI. So, one thing in terms of addressing different needs of industries related to data provenance, lineage, governance, and security, and different chains. As mentioned, we are planning on rolling out our own chain for each industry because each industry has its own industry-specific needs in terms of data provenance and security. This is going to enable us to build value under the Vector Space Biosciences Inc. name, similar to the way Alphabet and Berkshire Hathaway have done for their stakeholders. And incubators as well, such as Paul Graham's and Jessica Livingston's Y Combinator. Alphabet can be considered an incubator itself, with the Google name underneath, and with Alphabet having been the parent company, rolled out afterwards. Alphabet's structure was inspired by the structure of Berkshire Hathaway, which has proven to be one of the most lucrative structures for stakeholders. We'd encourage everybody to look up Alphabet Inc. on Wikipedia. The structure is described there. It will be similar to, our structure will be similar to that structure. We'll have similarities. And as mentioned, it will be beneficial for all stakeholders, very similar to Berkshire Hathaway. And just as Alphabet is similar to Berkshire Hathaway, so will Vector Space Biosciences be similar to Alphabet and Berkshire Hathaway. According to that Wikipedia entry for Alphabet, and quoting, over 20 years ago, Berkshire Hathaway's stock price rose from $7,455 to $17,250 per share in a little more than a 5-year period. Far from coming back down, the stock rose again to over $344,000 per share in February 2020. Today, it's trading at $420,566 a share. So, of course, we know that's no competition compared to what BTC will be, and that's why we're here. Question 8. Is Morningstar still on the table? Would you be dealing with Joe Mansueto or one of his associates? The reason I ask is because I'm local friends with him and have been shilling crypto to him for a while. So the answer is yes, Morningstar is still on the table. They're at the table, and dinner is ready to be served. So we do not deal with Joe Mansueto over there. We deal with Gozde Ozdemir. Question 9. I would really enjoy hearing you discuss NLP/NLU and datasets with Lex Friedman. If you're not familiar with Lex, he's an AI researcher and Russian immigrant based in Austin, Texas, who is passionate about machine learning and all things AI. He hosts a very popular podcast because he's a phenomenal interviewer and conversationalist. How can we make this happen? I'm sure the trader base would be thrilled to listen. And we agree with you. The trader base would be thrilled to listen. Our Marcom team will reach out to Lex Friedman. We are fans of his. We've heard a few podcasts of his. And it would be a privilege to be interviewed by Lex Friedman. Next, we'll move to our strategy section. And as mentioned, we have announced our additions to our scientific advisory board and collaborators. And we are leading with the science, as we've mentioned. And the best way to understand our roadmap is to understand a little bit of the science. And that would include reviewing the latest PR. The latest PR does serve as a roadmap. And while we lead with the science, including published joint work, we are going to be shifting from the enterprise to the consumer. We have spent some time in terms of customer discovery and onboarding with enterprises and institutions. We've learned quite a bit, and we are certainly now going to be hedging the market and hedging our revenue options with retail traders. And we consider retail traders the consumer. We've executed on consumer models in the past, and consumer models, especially today, can be quite beneficial for a company's bottom line. And that would include crypto baskets. That's how we're entering the consumer market, with crypto baskets and with baskets, thematic baskets for traditional stocks, which we already offer in vanilla form based on the Vectorspace Thematic Baskets Club channel. And in relation to the investment club, we are reviewing whether or not a decentralized autonomous organization can be constructed for the investment club. And we are undergoing that design or that proposal, that internal proposal that we've put together is being reviewed by our legal team. We're also going to determine whether or not it's good or bad for an institutional partner, one that may come from Morningstar, for example, in terms of their offering one to us to be able to onboard the over 1,000 members in our investment club. We don't have the ability to operate as a hedge fund. That's why we'd be taking on an institutional partner like that. We are also not registered financial advisors in any U.S. state. And that would be another reason for us to take on an institutional partner to service the investment club. If that institutional partner has no interest in a DAO for the investment club, then that would be something for us to consider. If the DAO passes a legal review, that would also be something for us to consider. So we have made no decisions on whether or not we will establish a DAO for the investment club, but that is an option. And we invite any feedback on that from the public. And finally, we'd like to say that our scientific data engineering pipelines, datasets, visualizations, and human-in-the-loop AI and ML will be available for subscription, licensing, and revenue sharing based on therapeutic target and drug discovery for all biosciences companies, including biotechs and pharmaceutical companies. Our work with Imperial College of London, ICL, and University College of London, UCL, related to material science, connects primarily to nanomedicine but extends to all materials, including rare earth elements, which can be used for head and body shielding from GCRs, galactic cosmic rays, and HZE particles, heavy ion particles, during spaceflight. Ultimately, we see our work in space biosciences connecting directly to personalized medicine, which includes cocktails of repurposed and repositioned drug compounds, new compounds, and micronutrients related to nutrigenomics. All of this relies on datasets that can generate graph networks and relationship networks, which can be transformed into enabling new hypotheses and discoveries. This concludes our call for this week. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to join us online.